favorite books of the last year, Liberty and Tyranny. Let me just introduce Cathie briefly. She was voted the chairman of the Texas GOP in 2009, so she's been a true Republican and conservative. Been every state convention since '88, I think I read, and every presidential and national convention since '92. More important, when I was reading her biography, I saw some things that really stood out. That were issues that were important to me. First of all, right to life, lawsuit reform, and she's a big supporter of the NRA. There's something about a woman with a gun. So anyway, she has been not only a strong proponent of conservative issues in Texas, but throughout the country, and she's traveled around the world to different conferences to lobby for conservative issues. So with that, I'd like to introduce Cathie Adams.
Since I don't need the podium and these men are taller than I am, we'll just move it. Since this is a very competitive club, I'd like to point out the fact that as you are an award winner, there is another county in the state that's bigger than Dallas County. Which one is it?
Yes.
And guess which county probably votes more straight tickets than any other in the state? Harris County. Folks, we can compete with that. We can beat them. We can vote straight Republican tickets. And I know that that's what we want to do, because what happened in 2006 in Dallas County is not indicative of our county turning left. We have not done that. We became weary. As I've gone around and visited with many of you tonight, I know that many of us became disenchanted with some who wore the Republican label, but thought that if we were going to win in the future, we were going to have to turn left. No, we didn't. As a matter of fact, when we saw states like Virginia, we saw even Massachusetts on the people's seat, not Ted Kennedy's seat. I mean, there is no way that winning means becoming more liberal as Republicans. And yet many thought that they had us kind of where they wanted us. But that's not where we're going, and certainly not where we're going on my watch. Thank you very much. Now, there are two fine conservatives in this room who haven't been introduced but are elected. That's Tim Hoy and Jane Birch on the State Executive Committee. Stand up so people can see you. Well, when I read this book, I thought, my goodness, if people in the United States who are voters had read Mark Levins' book, they wouldn't have fallen for hope and change. And so I wanted to understand myself and to be able to articulate to the people across Texas what in the world happened in 2008 when some man whose lips move and every time they're moving he's lying, wins an election and wins it rather handily. And so I thought that Mark Levin not only presented that case so well, but the other thing he does is look for the Conservative Manifesto at the end of this. Because he doesn't just leave us with not only what our founders intended, that's the way we start, but then the situation we're in today and some of those earmarks, whether it be cap and tax or health care debacle, but then he leaves us with this Conservative Manifesto. So with that, let's see what Mark Levin has to say. How many of you listen to Mark Levin? All right. Yeah, I mean, I was listening as well on my way here. I think he's one of the best because I really enjoy his knowledge of the law and the Constitution as a constitutional lawyer. The fact that he worked with the Reagan administration, so he has a historical knowledge and recent history as well. But anyway, our founders had a very conservative point of view. That's life, society, and government, understanding. What is conservatism? It's a way of understanding life, society, and government. And who did our founders study? What works did they read in order to establish this constitutional republic in which we live? They studied Adam Smith. And, you know, it was amazing. One lady that I had worked with and known for over 20 years in the conservative movement, when I said Adam Smith, she'd never heard his name. You know, the free market system, folks, the economy upon which we have seen the greatest engine of liberty ever in the world is the idea of Adam Smith, this free market economy. Charles Montesquieu, the separation of powers. Yeah, I know, Barack Hussein Obama's forgotten all about that. Now he's trying to ram through a socialized medical system without even having a vote in the House, and that's what Mark Levins was all enlivened about tonight. But the separation of powers has been part of what has made us a great nation as well as natural rights, and John Locke wrote a number of treatises on that. So those were the three of the major thinkers who had written eloquently, spoken eloquently, and of course our founders then studied their works. They were not only influenced though by those men, but also by their faith. And it's interesting that Levin including the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Why does he bring that out? Obviously because did Rome fall from without or from within? Folks, if we fall as the lone superpower, it's more likely to be from within. And that's not what we want to do. That's not the model of behavior that we want as a nation. And so that's why you're here tonight. That's why we're involved in this political process. In our Declaration of Independence, most of us know how it begins, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. But the part that we kind of gloss over is a little bit later in that paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator. Oh my goodness. Now, how dare someone mention a Creator in this day and age? You know, aren't we all more evolved than that? You know, the more evolved we get and move away from God the Creator, the more trouble we get into. It seems to me that we ought to kind of speak up and get a spine here when our own founders said that there were rights given to us that cannot be given to us by a government, and a government cannot take away, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if they acknowledge the Creator, it's okay if we do too, right? Yes. Thank you. And James Madison, who probably wrote more of the Constitution than any of the other founders, explained in Federalist 51, and let me tell you folks, I was speaking in Coppell County about 2 months ago, and there were two men who came up to me afterwards and they said, you know, until recently we didn't even know that the Federalist Papers existed. So we in our educational system have some blanks in there that we need to catch up on, and that's why I, for one, am so excited about the 912 groups, the Tea Parties, and all the other groups that are coming out and learning our political process and getting involved. But James Madison said in Federalist 51, but what is government itself but the greatest of all reflections of human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls of government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself.